Alright, we're going to go through classifying plants by starting with the most general type of classification and moving down to the most specific type of classification. So we're going to start with the classification that all plants are given of either vascular or non-vascular. Any plant can be classified as either vascular or non-vascular. If it's a vascular plant, it's going to have an internal transport system. And you can think about this kind of like your circulatory system. So you have blood vessels that move oxygen and other things throughout your body where you need them. And plants have something similar, except they're not blood vessels. They're a different kind of transport system that move water and nutrients to where the plant needs it. Now, because these types of plants have this internal transport system, they're able to grow larger than plants that don't have that. So plants that don't have an internal transport system are called non-vascular plants. And non-vascular plants are things like mosses. There's a picture of moss there. And they're called non-vascular because they don't have an internal transport system. So what they have to do instead to be able to get water and nutrients is they transport these things through their cells through diffusion and osmosis. And this is a much slower process than just moving it through a transport system. So these plants have to grow very small so that they have so that they can get the nutrients that they need to all of their cells. So they can't get very big because they don't have that internal transport system. Now, if a plant is classified as vascular, then it can be classified in a more specific way as either a seed plant or a seedless plant. If it's a non-vascular plant, it can't be classified as seedless or seed plant. If it's non-vascular, you got to stop there. But if it is vascular, you can move on to the next level. So, if it's a vascular plant and it has seeds, it's called a seed plant. And this is the most common type of plant. Most plants are seed plants. These include both plants that have flowers and plants that produce cones. And cones are like pine tree cones. And then there's another type of plant that is vascular. It has that transport system, but it doesn't produce seeds. And these are things like ferns. If you've ever looked at the back of a fern leaf, there are some little black spots, and those are spores. So plants like ferns don't produce seeds, and instead they produce spores. And this is just an alternative way to reproduce. So these plants are called seedless because they don't produce seeds. Now, if a plant is classified as a seed plant, then you can go to the next level down. If it's seedless, then you have to stop there. But seed plants can further be classified as gymnosperms or angiosperms. So if they produce seeds, they're either going to produce those seeds through flowers or through cones. If they produce the seeds through flowers, then they're called angiosperms. These are flowering plants. The name angiosperm means enclosed seed because these plants produce a seed inside of a fruit. So something like an apple has a seed inside. It protects the seed, and it's produced by a flowering plant. So these types of plants rely on pollinators like bees or birds and sometimes wind to spread pollen so that they can reproduce. So they have to get something to move pollen from one plant to another to be able to fertilize the seed so that it can reproduce. Some types of plants that are angiosperms are grasses and trees and shrubs. Now, if the seed plant doesn't produce flowers, then it's going to produce cones. And these are things like pine trees. And we call them cone-bearing plants. And the name gymnosperm actually means naked seed. So instead of the seed being enclosed in a fruit, it's on a cone. And it's if you look at the cone, it has these little petals. The seed is just going to sit right at the base of each of the little petals, so it's kind of exposed. So these plants produce cones that hold the seeds rather than a fruit. Now, if something is classified as an angiosperm, meaning it produces flowers, then you can go to the next level down. If it's a gymnosperm, you have to stop there. But if it's an angiosperm, we can move and decide if it's a monocot or a dicot. If it's a monocot, that name monocot literally means one cotyledon. And cotyledon is the name that we give to the very first leaf that's produced inside of a seed. So if you could somehow watch the development of the plant inside of the seed underground, there's one little leaf that sprouts first, and that's called the cotyledon. And if there's only one leaf that's produced, then it's a monocot. Sometimes there's two leaves that are produced at the same time, and that would be a dicot. So, monocots have one cotyledon. They have a few other characteristics that stay pretty consistent. They have parallel veins in their leaves, so you can see in the picture here that the veins of this leaf kind of go in long straight lines. They're parallel veins. The flowers of these kinds of plants come in threes, so you can see that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a factor of 3, so you've got two sets of 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and that's something that happens with monocots. And then you have fibrous roots, and fibrous roots are like in the picture here. You can see that there's all these little hairs coming down from the roots. There's really no one distinct root, it's just a whole bunch of them kind of together. So we call that fibrous. Now, if it's not a monocot and it produces flowers, then it's going to be a dicot. And dicot literally means two cotyledons. So when that first set of leaves are produced, there's going to be two of them produced at the same time instead of just one. They have branched veins rather than parallel veins, and those veins are kind of like in the picture here, they kind of go off in branches, like branches of a tree. They have flowers in sets of 4 or 5, so that means they could have 8 or 10 flowers as well, but they're in sets of 4 or 5, like this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then their roots usually have one taproot. So you can look at the dandelion plant here and see that there's this one root that's kind of bigger than the rest of the roots, and there's a bunch of little ones kind of coming off of it, but that one thick part of the root is called a taproot, and it's so that it can grow deep down into the ground and get water from deeper. So these are things that you see with dicots.